Berachos Daf nun, as we discussed yesterday, if there are 3 people that are mezamen, you say nevarach shachalim shaloi. If you have 4 people, then the 4th person could tell the 3 baruchu shachalim shaloi. You make the bracha. The Gemara today tells us it's preferable if everybody says the same thing and the 4th person doesn't remove himself from the group, and they all say nevarach shachalim shaloi. The Gemara proves it from the Mishnah later on today's daf. 3 people that are eating, it's also for them to split up. That ruins the zimun. But if you have 6 people, you could break it into 2 groups of 3. The question is, by breaking into 2 groups of 3, you no longer could say Baruch Hu Hashem, Baruch Shachalnu. You have to say Nevarach Shachalnu. You see from here that Nevarach Shachalnu is better than Baruch Hu Shachalim Shalai. The Gemara tells us that from the way a person says benching Berachos Hamazon, you can see whether or not he's a Talmid Chacham or Amaretz. Now don't forget, in those days, it was also for them to say from a siddur, they had to say it by heart. Different people said it different ways. A Talmid Chacham, the Gemara says, will say uvetuvai, and from his goodness, but not mituvai with a mem, because mem means you lessen what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us. It's only partial, the partial goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What about the fact that we say it's with a mem, from your bracha you give us? The answer is, that's when it comes to tefillah, when you ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for something, don't ask a lot. Ask for the minimum. What about the fact that we say, Harchiv picha v'amaleo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, open up your mouth, daven to me for anything, and I'll give it to you? That's referring to Torah. When it comes to Torah, you can ask for a lot. The Gemara continues. A Talmid Chacham says, Uvetuvoi chayinu, our life. Amar says, Chayim, your life. Talmid Chacham says, Nevarach sha'achalnu mishaloi, and not like an Amaretz who says, Lemi sha'achalnu mishaloi, referring to the host that fed him. But we say on Pesach, in the Haggadah, Lemisha asal of lavisein of alonos kol hanisim ha'elu. In the Haggadah, it's obvious that we're talking to Rebbeinu Shalom. Talmid Chacham says Baruch Shachalim Shaloi, and Amar says Ala Mazain Shachalim Shaloi, almost making a bracha on the food rather than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But when it's 10 people, you're allowed to say Ala Mazain because everybody understands that you're talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because you just mentioned his name. Yesterday we described that Rabbi Yossi learns from the word v'makalois that it depends how many people are being mizamen. 100 people say this thing, 1,000 people say that. Rabbi Kiva says they're all the same. Everybody says nevarach alikeinu shachalim mishaloi. So what does Rabbi Kiva do with the word v'makalois? He learns that even the babies in the mother's stomach said shira by kriyas yamsov. And Rabbi Yossi says you're right, but I learned that from the word mikar. Rav Chama was in the Reish Golos' house and he tried to find 100 people. Finally, he could get to say the special zimun for 100 people, and they told him, wait, Rava said that Allah is like Rabbi Kiva, that doesn't matter 100 or 10, you only say Nevarach Elokeinu Shechalim Shaloi. Says Rava in the Reish Golos' house, there was a lot of people there, but when it came to benching, we'd split up and make small groups of 3-3, because the Reish Golos was very makpid. If we made chaburas, different groups, 3-3, we could get away with it. Why not listen to the Reish Golos' zimun? Because it was so loud there, it was hard to concentrate. 3 people that were eating, and one of them benched on his own. The 2 that didn't bench, they could force the 3rd one to be starved in the zimun, but he is not yoitza in zimun. The Gemara tells us the Rav Bar Papa got up in shul one day and he said Baruch Hu Hashem, and he never finished off the word HaMevayrach, which is a machlokes. You say Mevayrach or not, and the congregation they answered Baruch Hashem HaMevayrach Leilam Vad. And Rav said, Pasya Ukma, you're like a black cloth, like a Talmid Chacham that doesn't change his clothing, dirty clothing. Why are you getting involved in a machlokes? When the halacha is like Rabbi Shmuel, that you don't say HaMevayrach, you say HaMevayrach, and everybody agrees that HaMevayrach is better, why are you getting yourself involved? Says the Mishnah, that if there are 2 groups in a house, and some of the group sees the other group, then the mitzdarif as one, they could do one zimun. Another halacha, if you have a cup of wine that's not diluted, in those days the wine was very strong, you had to dilute it with water, you don't make bar priya gafen. The Gemara tells us, what's the chiddush in our Mishnah? That 3 are mezamin, we already discussed this. A number of tirutzim. One pshat is that even if they just sat down, the 3, and they never ate anything, they didn't eat a kazais, they didn't eat at all, they cannot get up. It's considered that the kuvei makom, they can't get up and split. Or they all were eating, but they were eating from their own bread. Nevertheless, they can't get up and leave. Or the pshat is, you had 9 people, 3 groups of 3. And one person from each group went to the center and they made a new group. That new group cannot separate. And Rava says that's only if the original groups didn't do zimun for them, but once the original groups do zimun, their chiyuv of zimun disappears, dissipates, and they can no longer be mezamen. And he brings a raya from a bed. If there's a bed that was tamei, and somebody stole half the bed, the rest of the bed becomes tar. And even though you found the part that was stolen, you reattached it, the tumah never comes back. And so too over here, once the original group says zimun for you, that chiyuv makes the zimun, your zimun, dissipate, and that chiyuv never comes back. If there are two groups far from each other, but there's a waiter in between, that waiter is mitzvah the two groups, and they could do zimun together. When we're discussing wine that wasn't diluted, what bracha do you make on that kind of wine? Machlokes. According to Rebbe Lezer, you make boy priates, and you can wash your hands with it. Chacham say no. Regardless if it's diluted or not, you make boy priagafen. What can you do with wine that's not diluted? You can make medicine out of it, and you should not wash your hands with it because that's disrespectful to the food. Chacham admit that when it comes to kosher bracha, you make a special kiddush or zimun on a cup of wine. That wine should be diluted, because it's a mitzvah min hamuvchar. We know it's better wine, and for a mitzvah, you take the best they can take. There's 4 halachas that are said by bread. You should not throw bread. You shouldn't make the bread disgusting to a point where you can't eat it, such as putting raw meat on it, or bringing a cup of wine over it. The wine might drip on the bread, and you won't be able to eat it, or leaning a dish on the bread, because if the dish spills on your bread, you won't eat it. Mar Zutra threw fruit because he held that this halacha of not throwing bread is only by bread and not by fruit, and only by food, that if it falls on the floor, you won't eat it, it'll be disgusting, you won't eat it. The Gemara tells us, though, that by a wedding, you're allowed to pour wine into different pipes as long as it doesn't get destroyed. That's not considered bizu oichlim. You're allowed to throw nuts at the chassan and kala as long as they're not destroyed and they don't become disgusting. And finally, if you're eating food and you realize you didn't make a bracha, what do? Well, it depends. If you're drinking, then you just swallow the drink. If you're eating food that is disgusting to take out of your mouth, so you put it to the side of your mouth and you make a bracha. But if you take it out of your mouth without it being disgusting, take it out of your mouth and make the bracha and have a wonderful day.